Bean's treachery and cannibalism have made him a folk hero in his native Scotland. The Beans were rumoured to have lived in a cave with roughly 50 members of their immediate family, all born of incest. They were notorious for robbing, kidnapping, and killing strangers, who they then dismembered and ate. The Beans are rumoured to have cannibalized 1,000 people over the course of 25 bloodthirsty years. A lot of people think that the events in The Hills Have Eyes, a chilling cult classic, are based on this gruesome tale. However, is the story of Sawney Bean based on fact or fiction? Very little is known about Alexander Sawney Bean's early life, other than the fact that he was supposedly born in the late 1600s near Edinburgh, Scotland. According to Dr. Louise Yeoman of Scotland, Bean's story may have begun at the turn of the 17th century, even though he does not appear in the historical record until 1755. Bean, according to Yeoman, is also set in the 15th century, during the reign of James I of Scotland, though it's possible that the King James who ruled Scotland at the turn of the 17th century was confused with the King James I. Sawney Bean, however, is viewed as a ruthless barbarian regardless of when he actually lives. While some have speculated that tannery was Bean's first profession, others have suggested that he worked as a hedger or ditcher instead. Despite this, it is generally agreed upon that Bean eventually abandoned these vocations in favour of a life in Ayrshire with a woman sometimes known as Black Agnes Douglas. According to folklore, the Beans abandoned civilization and isolated themselves in a sea cave. The cave, which has since been renamed Benane Cave, was said to disappear beneath the waves at high tide. Supposedly, this enormous rock formation had a network of tunnels that extended for more than a mile underground, providing the young couple with more than enough room to start and raise their monstrous family. Rapidly expanding, Sawney Bean's wife eventually gave birth to 14 children. Bean had to resort to robbery and murder because he had a growing family to support and no reliable source of income. The members of his family soon began assisting him in his criminal activities. As a result of the Beans' coordinated ambush of lone travelers and bystanders, they were left with a large number of bodies. According to folklore, this is what led the Beans to cannibalism in the first place. Those who fell victim to the criminal family were reportedly butchered, quartered, and pickled in the cave. The family expanded over the years. In the end, 18 grandsons and 14 granddaughters were born in the cave, all the result of incest. In the end, there were 45 Beans, and they all craved human flesh. Sawney Bean, aided by his mini-army, would plan and execute ambushes with military precision, pursuing and pounce upon their prey before dragging their bodies back to the cave to be eaten. Every day, more names were added to the list of missing people, and body parts would occasionally wash up on shore, but the Beans, who were hidden from society, remained undetected. Innkeepers in the area were often the last people to see the missing person, making them prime suspects. Due to the increased risk of false accusations, many innkeepers closed their businesses and sought employment elsewhere. However, the terror caused by the Bean family would not last forever. The Beans once surrounded a couple riding home from the town fair, and the husband shot his wife. From behind, the Beans attacked the couple, killing the woman instantly and devouring her insides. Her husband had witnessed the horror firsthand and fought the Beans fiercely. He ran his horse over a few of them, drew his sword and pistol, and eventually freed himself. When the Beans noticed the group of about 30 fairgoers following them, they ran away, but not before revealing themselves to be the cannibalistic, cave-dwelling murderers that they were. While this was going on, the husband travelled to Glasgow to petition King James VI to intervene with the Bean family. The legend continues with the king allegedly leading a mob of 400 men. When the king's hounds finally reached Benane Cave, they discovered a horrific scene of mutilated bodies, hanging corpses, and stolen goods piled high. The Beans were arrested and transported to Leith, Scotland, where they were to be executed without further incident. According to legend, the locals were so appalled by the Bean family that they demanded a more torturous punishment than simple execution. Thus, 21 of the Bean women perished in the fire. They cut them up and left them to bleed to death. Historians have long argued that the gruesome tale of Sawney Bean is likely nothing more than a tall tale. There is no evidence of Bean's existence in the modern era aside from a story from 1755. Even the 400-person manhunt led by the King of Scotland is not documented, nor are the missing people or the innkeepers who were forced to abandon their businesses. Certainly, yeomen claimed, there would be evidence if the king had led an attack to eliminate a family of cannibalistic Scots who were hiding in a cave. So, tell me, where did this myth begin? Yeoman, among other historians, argues that it was nothing more than an English propaganda tool. It sounds like the plot for a box office-topping horror film, and that's because it was invented to serve a very similar purpose, to sell books, Yeoman said. As the author notes, it also has a more sinister subtext. The books it sold were published not in Scotland but in England, at a time when there was widespread prejudice against Scots. Yeoman claimed that during the 17th and 18th centuries, when the Scots were attempting to place one of their own on the British throne, the English media frequently portrayed the Scots as sinister barbarians. Such rumours were spread to undermine their support for the cause. Additionally, the name Sawney was originally a descriptor for a stereotypical Scottish cartoon character. That's like referring to a caricature of an Irishman as Paddy. The Scots were mocked in the Sawney tale because they were portrayed as so primitive that they could create a monster like Sawney, who lived in a cave and ate people. Whether or not Alexander Sawney Bean actually existed, his story would continue to influence media for decades. The Hills Have Eyes, a cult classic horror film, turns out to be based on a true story that was written by Sawney Bean. A family finds themselves stranded in the Nevada desert and becomes the target of a group of inbred mutants who live in the nearby mountains, setting the tone for the film's gory events. Like in the original Sawney Bean tale, a family of cannibals terrorizes unsuspecting travelers in the film before killing, eating, and pickling them. Wes Craven, the writer and director of the film, released it to frightened audiences in 1977. Came from an article I saw in the New York Library about the Sawney Bean, sick, family, Craven says of the inspiration for The Hills Have Eyes. As is to be expected with any legend, Craven's telling of the Sawney Bean story deviates slightly from the standard version. In the 1700s, Craven claims, there was an area that had road running through it from Scotland, and people thought it was haunted because people kept disappearing from that road. Craven knew the part of the Bean story where a single man avoided capture by the cannibals and notified the king. However, Craven also discovered an unexpected bit of irony. The authorities did the most excruciating things to them after the king and his angry mob discover the Bean family. The hypocrisy of nice, civilized people committing such atrocities prompted my reaction. And the worst of us have redeeming qualities. Whether or not the Bean family had a nice side is unclear from the legends, but maybe Wes Craven is justified in trying to find some good in this otherwise harrowing tale.